Hi soul travelers, welcome back to another video. It's Medusa, and today we're going to be talking about the astrological symbols in astrology, specifically the planets. I wanted to make this video because I am still a little baby astrologer myself, and I wanted to find a way where I can remember the planets in a different way. So this video is going to be breaking down the astrological signs and better ways to help you remember them. So let's get into it. We're going to start off with some really simple ones first. First, we have the sun. The sun is literally just the sun. How I like to remember the sun sign in astrology is thinking of the eye of Ra. Ra is the Egyptian god of, you guessed it, the sun. And as you think of the little eye of Ra, there's a little circle inside of the sun sign for astrology. So if you think of it looking like an eyeball, and then thinking of the eye of Ra, who is the god of the sun in Egyptian. Also, you can think of it as the soul. If you look at the symbol for the sun, it has that little dot in the middle. And what's another word for sun? Soul. And you can think of it as the soul being the center of our being. So when you think of the sign in astrology of sun, think of the eye of Ra. There's an eye in the middle of the sun, or you can think of it as soul, another word for sun, and how the soul is the center of our being. And if we have the sun, we also have the moon. And the moon is probably the easiest one yet. It's literally just a moon. So nothing really to explain with that. If you're wondering what the astrology symbol is for moon, it's literally just the moon. So those are pretty simple ones. And then we go into the Earth, our planet, where we live in this lifetime. For the planet Earth, what you can do is think of the 4 directions. So for the Earth sign, we can think of the 4 cardinal directions. We have north, south, east, and west. Or you can also think of it as the 4 corners of the earth, something that is talked about a lot in history. We can think of the 4 directions. We have the north, the south, the east, and the west. And so it's just a big circle with those 4 directions. So we have the sun, we have the moon, and then we have the earth. Next, we can talk about Neptune. Neptune is the god of the sea. And with the symbol of an astrology for Neptune, you can think of, and it looks very much like the trident. So when you think of how can I remember the symbol for Neptune, just remember that it looks like a trident and that he is also the god of the sea. So if you can put those things together, you have Neptune, the god of the sea. He holds a trident, and that's also the symbol of Neptune. Next, we're talking about Jupiter. So this one's a really cool one that I figured out, just kind of playing with the word and again, trying to figure out how I could remember all of these symbols in astrology. If you take the word Jupiter, and then if you look at the symbol of Jupiter, it looks like a 2 and the number 4. So if you say 2 and 4, Jupiter, you kind of get the same thing with it as well. So if you just remember that it looks like a 2 and a 4. 2 and 4, Jupiter. Next, we have Saturn. And Saturn, we're starting to kind of go into a little bit more of a difficult symbols for astrology. How I like to think of Saturn is we know that Saturn has its big rings and its own belt. And for the sign and symbol for Saturn, I like to think of it as if one of those rings just kind of flew off and is kind of just dangling now. So if you look at the symbol for Saturn, it looks like it was a ring at one point that kind of just broke off. So if you're thinking of Saturn and astrological sign of Saturn, think of its rings and then see how the symbol of Saturn kind of looks like it was a ring at one point that kind of just broke off. Next, we have Pluto. Now, Pluto has a couple of different symbols. So the one that we're going to be talking about in this video is to really help remember in the most easiest way of that sign. These are both of the symbols of Pluto, but we're going to be talking about this symbol. So Pluto is literally a big P and an L together. So those are the first two letters of Pluto, and that's how we can remember the astrological sign of Pluto. Next, we have Venus. Venus is the symbol of femininity, of beauty, of love. And so if you think of the sign for women, for feminine, it is the same sign as Venus. So remembering that Venus embodies love and beauty and feminine energy, just remember that the sign for Venus represents feminine energy. And if we have feminine energy, we also have masculine energy, and that is where Mars comes into place. So Mars has the symbol, you guessed it, masculine energy. So it's all about direction and action. Just remember that it is the opposite of Venus, which is masculine energy. So that is a sign for Mars. Next, we're going to talk about the nodes real quick. We have the South Node, which is also referred to as Ketu. And then we have the North Node, also known as Rahu. So with the South Node, it's a little simple to remember these nodes. So the South Node, or also known as Ketu, is pointing downwards, pointing south. And then the North Node, also known as Rahu, is pointing upwards. So we have the South Node, and then we have the North Node. So those are pointing in those same directions. That's a really easy way to remember the South Node, or Ketu, and then the North Node, Rahu. The next couple ones that we're talking about are some that not everyone studies in astrology, but they have really powerful energies just to be mindful of. So if you're new to astrology and you're not familiar with these next two astrological signs, don't worry, that's okay. But there's something to maybe look into a little bit later. The first one we have is Chiron. Chiron is known as the wounded healer, and its symbol, if you look at it, it looks like a key. So we have the Chiron, which can be spelled like this, or it can be spelled like this. And if you spell it with the K, it looks very similar to its symbol in astrology. Another way that we can remember Chiron is that it's known as the wounded healer, which is kind of the key to unlocking ourselves and going deep into our shadow and understanding these patterns that we have within ourselves that we have maybe brought into in this lifetime. So if you think of how it looks very much like a key. It's the key to the wounded healer. Next, we have the Black Lilith moon. If we look at Black Lilith moon, and then we look at the symbol of the Black Lilith moon, what I like to imagine, since it kind of sounds a little dark and mysterious, thinking of it as like the moon having a stake going through it. So you'd be thinking Halloween, vampire, or goth. It sounds very dark. It's a really great way to remember the Black Lilith moon. Going back to the main planets now, we have Uranus. And Uranus is also one, like Pluto, that has two different symbols. So you can use which other one that you want to, but for this video, we're going to be talking about this one, just so because again, it's a little bit easier to remember for its symbol in astrology. So with Uranus, it's a combination of both Mars and Sun's symbology. So that is one way to remember Uranus. And again, there's two different symbols for it, but we're only talking about this one in this video. Next, we have Mercury, which is my sign. I am a Gemini and I am ruled by Mercury. And Mercury is actually symbolized after the caduceus. So if you've ever been to a hospital or if you work in a hospital, you may be very familiar with what the caduceus looks like. It's the two snakes kind of spiraling up. And if you look at the Mercury symbol, you can kind of faintly see how that's related to it as well. So if you look at the bottom of the base where the cross is, you can kind of take one pattern one way, and that's one snake, and then going in the other direction, that's the other snake. So these two snakes kind of spiral in and then connect together, and that's your Mercury sign. So that's a really simple way to remember the sign of Mercury. That is all for this video, guys. Let me know how you enjoyed it. There are definitely a lot more astrological signs out there, and even more planets, asteroids, and different other cosmic things that are out there that are taken into account in astrology. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like a second part to this video focusing on the zodiac signs and maybe how to remember them, or going deeper into the other signs that are in astrology, let me know in the comments and I'll make a part 2 to this video as well. And I'll see you next time.